the overlap of ADHD and PMDD is something that affects so many people. Up to 45% of menstruators with ADHD also experience PMDD. Hello, welcome. My name is Liv and I'm a nutritionist and intuitive eating counselor with ADHD, and I work with people with ADHD, a lot of people with ADHD and hormonal conditions like PMDD, PMOS, endometriosis, perimenopause, hypothyroidism. In this video, I am going to talk about 3 strategies for helping to support yourself if you are someone who experiences the overlap of PMDD and ADHD. I am a nutritionist, so they will be pretty nutrition focused. Initially, this video, I was going to talk about 2 major mechanisms behind both PMDD and ADHD to do with estrogen and dopamine, as well as progesterone, allopregnenalone, and GABA. And I was going to talk about how those contribute to both PMDD and ADHD, but the video was so long, too long for me. So what I'm actually going to do is have a more action-oriented solutions video first for how to better support yourself with PMDD and ADHD. That's what this video is going to be. And then I'm going to do a more like sciencey deep dive nitty-gritty video on the mechanisms, hormonal, endocrine, and nervous system, mostly happening in your body that are contributing to, or maybe even causing ADHD and PMDD, this overlap, as well as worsening ADHD symptoms before your period. I said maybe because the science is pretty new, because women just haven't really been studied, especially neurodivergent women, much compared to cis men. Definitely better than it was, but still not great. So I'm working with what we do have. In my next video, I'm going to be getting into this a meta review that came out last year on ADHD, PMDD, the menstrual cycle, why and how our ADHD symptoms are worse before a period, and the role of PMDD and all of this, with the aim of understanding what's going on in the body, what we know as of right now is going on in the body to cause all that to happen. So please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss that video if you're interested in that. And yeah, let me know what videos you want me to make, because I love getting requests. A lot of the information and recommendations I've seen online are very much not with people in ADHD in mind. I will be, kind of going over what I mean by that and getting into that a little bit, and actually provide ADHD realistic guidelines for how to work with your menstrual cycle and support your menstrual cycle and ADHD via nutrition and other lifestyle modifications. So the first one is going to be understanding how your metabolism changes in your luteal phase. Technically, your menstrual cycle is just 2 phases, follicular and luteal, I guess, like depending on which approach or which framework you're working with. The follicular includes your period and the time between your period ending and ovulating. And then your luteal phase is the point after you ovulate to all the time between then and you getting your next period. The closer you get from ovulation to your next period, the more energy your body needs, because it is working so hard to build up your uterus lining. If you do not get pregnant during that cycle, that results in your period. So the walls of your uterus lining shed, and that is your period blood. And then throughout your next menstrual cycle, the walls of your uterus build up again as a biological mechanism. Since it is just so much work to do that for your body, it does need more energy. So in the second half of your menstrual cycle, it is great to give your body more energy through food. I think this is where cycle syncing tends to get really complicated, breaking the menstrual cycle into 4 different phases and saying you can eat this while you're on your period, but not this while you're on your period. A lot of that is just like not really coming from anywhere. I think some of it is for sure, but a lot of it's just like it sounds great in a reel or looks nice on like a Pinterest post. And I'm sure some of it's been helpful for people. I know people swear by it, but I think a lot of it also comes from a very restrictive place and leads to this idea that you should be eating certain things during your period and not certain things while you're not on your period or wherever you're at throughout your cycle. If you have ADHD and PMDD, you want to be eating as nutrient dense as possible in a way that is satisfying to you and you're actually enjoying eating those foods and you're noticing how they're making your body feel, how they're helping your symptoms, how they're helping your energy levels and your mood. But doing so from a place where you're tuned in to how these foods are affecting you, which does take time and also involves improving your interoception, which is your ability to recognize your body's internal signals, which is much harder to do in ADHD. I do have another video on that as well. When you are coming at this attempt to support your menstrual cycle and ADHD from a place that you kind of just like got on the internet that's not specific to you, it can first of all be really restrictive and impact your relationship with food. And just because of the culture we live in, so many people already have such a negative relationship with food. Also, I've seen reels and posts telling people to only eat antioxidants while they're ovulating and just like stuff like that, whereas you want to be eating antioxidants throughout your whole cycle. They're going to be helping every single phase. Same with things like complex carbs and protein and lean protein. You want to be eating those throughout your whole cycle, not just in your luteal phase or on your period. I think the most effective, simplistic, not overwhelming way of cycle syncing with ADHD or starting that process of just working with your menstrual cycle and starting to eat for your menstrual cycle is just starting to give your body even more sources of complex carbs, proteins, healthy fats, antioxidants during your luteal phase before your period. You do metabolically need more energy at this time. Just want to expand on this a little bit more. So if you are not giving your body the fuel it needs before your period because your metabolic needs, your metabolism is higher before you get your period because your body is preparing to have a period, this is really going to impact both ADHD and PMDD symptoms and make them both a lot worse, because there is not enough fuel for all the cells in your body for all their functions. This is also very much going to impact blood sugar levels, which is just basically how all your cells get energy. And when our blood sugar levels are too low, when there's not enough energy for all our cells, it can very much contribute to mood symptoms like anxiety and depression from PMDD, and same with ADHD, making things like brain fog and irritability so much worse when we're not eating enough and our blood sugar levels dip. Also, not eating enough is going to trigger more stress hormones to be released too, which is also going to make especially PMDD symptoms a lot worse, as well as ADHD symptoms too. So yes, the first major thing I recommend for just better aligning with your cycle with ADHD and PMDD as a way of supporting both is just making sure you are giving your body more fuel in the luteal phase before you get your period. So eating more sources of complex carbs, protein, fiber from vegetables, even more simplistic, just seeing it as protein, vegetables, carb. And this does involve tracking your cycle. So I do recommend that everyone who has a menstrual cycle track it. There are multiple ways you can do this. A lot of the apps are kind of sketchy, but as far as I know, one that I really like is Stardust. They are women-owned. They have really good privacy and security. Again, as far as I know, I haven't worked with them, but just like within the last 6 months, from what I've read up, they're a really good app. Visually, they're just like, it's like a really nice app. I really do enjoy them. And they have great memes. What I do, I use that app because I really like it. I like how visual it is, as well as tracking in my calendar. Just like the first day I get my period, I just put a little 1 and then 2 for day 2. And then that kind of gives me a sense of how long my cycles are, when I can expect my next period, when I can expect higher energy levels in the follicular and ovulatory zones. From there, starting to make sure you're eating regularly, especially in the luteal phase before your period, and really giving your body just that basic ADHD anti-inflammatory, non-restrictive anti-inflammatory diet, or just sources of foods. I went over this a lot more, just like what you should eat with ADHD in my last video. And it's just like a nutrient dense, high antioxidant, high fiber, higher protein approach to eating, but also doing that in a way that's not restrictive. So letting yourself have foods that you love that aren't necessarily nutrient dense. Like, I love chips. They're not really doing much for my ADHD, but I just like enjoy eating them so much. So I let myself have chips at the end of, honestly, most days. 3 out of 4 days out of the week for sure, I will be eating chips at the end of the day. I do so definitely after dinner for the most part. So I've already got my nutrient dense foods in my system and they're going to be working for my brain. And I don't really need my brain after like 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. honestly. Like, I need it throughout the day. So to me, it doesn't matter as much to be eating those fun foods that aren't necessarily giving me the nutrients I need, but they are just so good for just like enjoying and appreciating food. I love chips and I will be continuing to eat chips. Yeah, I just think a restrictive approach can really be more harmful than what it's worth because it just is such a direct connection to disordered eating and eating disorders, and that can just really spiral and snowball really fast. So I almost never recommend that approach unless obviously you're dealing with a severe allergy or food sensitivity. But just for the most part, I do like to take the nutrition by addition approach. So just adding in the foods that you know are going to give your body and brain the nutrients they need. And then another thing that I think can be really helpful is just coming back to seeing the menstrual cycle in 2 phases. So not necessarily the 2 phases that I just mentioned, but just phases based on your capacity and energy and how you're feeling, instead of compartmentalizing it into your period, the follicular phase, ovulation, and luteal phase. I think it is much more helpful to compartmentalize your cycle, or starting to approach it through your premenstrual phase. So when you're experiencing PMS or PMDD symptoms and your period, because this is probably going to be when you have the least capacity, lowest energy, lowest mood, sensitivity is probably going to be really high. ADHD symptoms are going to be really bad, more so at this time than any other time in your cycle. So it just makes a lot of sense to me and a lot of the clients I've worked with to divide it into these 2 phases. When you're low energy and don't have a lot of capacity, which is almost always going to be before your period and on your period. And then when you have okay energy, or maybe even good energy, which is more likely going to be once you're done your period and ovulating, and maybe even the earlier part of your luteal phase. And working with the menstrual cycle in 2 phases like this can be done for nutrition when you have more energy, more capacity in the follicular phase, starting to prep for when you know you're going to be taken out by your symptoms. If your symptoms are still really bad, your PMDD and ADHD symptoms before your period. If you can, just doing the things you can do to make your life easier during that phase and just starting to plan for that. So that could look like maybe cooking a meal that freezes well while you have the energy. In the higher energy phases, freezing that, and then you have this big nutrient dense chili or soup or whatever it is for when you don't have the energy to cook while you're experiencing PMDD or PMS symptoms or on your period. And this can really extend to all parts of life too. Another example, I almost never go to the gym before my period, and definitely not when I'm on my period, just because I really don't want to and I don't have the energy. I'll do other things that make my body feel really good, like I'll do more restorative yoga or yin yoga. I'll go for walks. I might do like a YouTube qigong video, but I'm just not going to push myself to go to the gym when I know I don't have the energy and I don't want to, when I'm already feeling more sensitive and my mood is not good and I'm already struggling with executive function. And then once I'm done my period and when I'm ovulating in the early luteal phase, when I do have that energy, I find that I just want to go to the gym more and actually enjoy it more because I have the energy. Yeah, that hasn't even been something I've really like intentionally done, just from learning so much about the menstrual cycle over the last few years and implementing these changes. That's just kind of been like a natural, gradual transition that I've noticed. Yeah, there's this approach of just going easier on yourself and doing less when you can before your period and on your period, and then making up for that and planning for that when you're not on your period and when you have more energy. I just think that is a more effective and much less overwhelming way to approach working with your cycle, or just beginning to approach working with your cycle, because it can just get so overwhelming so fast and there's just so much information coming from everywhere, and just a lot of it isn't actually like based in anything, or a lot of it may have worked for one person, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. And a lot of the time, the people who are giving these recommendations on how to do cycle syncing are like, that's their job. They're getting paid to make these videos. So that makes it much easier to actually implement all these really intricate little changes that could be doing a lot, but also isn't realistic unless you're getting compensated for doing that. So I just think that is something huge to consider with things like nutrition and movement and just stress management, all these foundational things that are really going to help support PMDD and ADHD. You do want to implement them gradually because you want to have them be something that actually sustains you and that you grow with, rather than something that you try to take on too fast, and then it actually has the opposite effect because of that and doesn't end up sticking and just results in a lot of frustration and money wasted and exhaustion, and you're already dealing with PMDD and ADHD. So if you can, just really taking it gradually, step by step, introducing maybe 1 or 2 new things each cycle that are going to help support you during that time, really gradually building that foundation. And then the final recommendation for dealing with PMDD and ADHD that I have a lot, but I don't want to make these videos too long. That's going to be reducing alcohol. Hate to say it, but I have to be true to myself and the science and the reality of the situation. It's so hard because we live in a culture that is obsessed with alcohol, and a lot of the time socializing is so centered around alcohol, and socializing is so central to our mental health. So it really is a messy situation. Excessive alcohol intake will make both ADHD and PMDD symptoms so much worse, and like everything so much worse. If you have any other conditions, alcohol is not going to help at all. It's going to make it a lot worse. Like most things, I don't like an all or nothing approach, especially because alcohol is just so centered in our culture, and again, it is so tied to just how we socialize. What's really worked for me over the past few years is having more of a harm reduction approach to alcohol. I still drink. I'll have like a few drinks, ideally no more than 2. If I can just have 1 drink, that's kind of perfect when I go out. But I do find it really hard, and so many people with ADHD also struggle with addiction traits as well, and I definitely very much relate to that. But something that I found helpful is just having other sources of fun dopamine drinks that don't contain alcohol, having that with alcohol. So I'll often like have like a beer and then have like a Diet Coke or something. Not, again, not great for ADHD, but compared to alcohol, having a Diet Coke or a Coke, like any pop, is going to be so much better than having alcohol. But there's also a lot of really good low sugar or sugar-free drinks that you could get, or like a fruit juice. And also, just when you drink, not drinking on an empty stomach, that's going to be really bad. So making sure you're having a snack or even a meal before or with. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I wanted to include this one, but it is just going to have such an impact on PMDD and ADHD symptoms that it felt not right to not include it. And it really is like a very personal one for me too. And I have very much noticed the effects of just consuming less alcohol over the last few years. I'm not like someone who lives with a lot of regrets. I don't really see the point, but one thing that I do regret, I guess, is just the amount of alcohol I drank as a teenager and in my 20s. Just because it was so normalized, I just connected that with socializing, and it did make it a lot easier to socialize too. It very much like quelled a lot of my social anxiety and other like ADHD related symptoms too. But it's just so bad for our brain and hormones and everything. So if you can reduce drinking alcohol and just taking it really gradually too, and just knowing that like if you do want to try the sobriety path, that's also amazing as well. But just knowing that if you decide that and then you have a drink, that doesn't mean you failed. You can just start again the next day, or just like try the harm reduction approach where you have overall less. Let me know if you want me to make a video about alcohol and ADHD, because I think I would like to do that. Another thing I do want to mention, when I started reducing alcohol, my period symptoms got a lot better. In my mid-20s, I used to have really, really painful periods. When I dramatically reduced my alcohol intake, they got a lot better for the most part. Every once in a while, I'll have like a painful cycle, and I think that's related to stress or sleep, because sleep is something I very much struggle with still. Or just some other things, but just compared to how bad they used to be, like I used to have to leave work because my period was so bad, and I was just like excessively binge drinking at that time. And I hate when people say like stuff like, this worked for me, so it'll work for you. I'm not trying to like come at it like that, but I did want to mention that, and I am confident that reducing your alcohol intake will help both ADHD and PMDD symptoms. They're both very complicated. There's a lot going on: brain, hormones, metabolism, digestion, so many things going on contributing to both of these conditions. But alcohol is, especially excessive alcohol, is making them worse. Okay, so that's it for the video. I'm gonna start I guess I'm just gonna summarize what I talked about and have a few final words and then end it. Thank you so much for watching up to this point. I really, really appreciate it. It's been like really hard doing YouTube videos because it's just hard to get visibility. So I appreciate you watching this so much. If you don't mind liking and subscribing, that would be awesome. I would love that. And that would just help me make more videos like this, and I can make them more specific. Because I am just like so grateful and privileged to be in a place where I get to research and talk about and work with people on using nutrition to help improve their ADHD and hormone symptoms and PMDD, PMOS, perimenopause symptoms, endo, all these hormonal conditions that are going to impact every aspect of your life. And just, it kills me and crushes me how women's health and trans and non-binary health have just not been taken seriously at all, for the most part, by medical research. It's definitely better than it was, but just like there's such a history of women being, and gender non-conforming people and trans people just not being taken seriously and not being treated like people, and just like the lack of information and solutions we have for such serious conditions like PMDD is just such a reflection of that. If you are someone who has both PMDD and ADHD, I'm so sorry that the system has failed you. I would just like you to remember that so many people are also going through this. You're not alone. If you are able to find community of other people going through this, I find community is always the right answer to life's problems, unless it's a cult, but that's not really community, that's different. Doing the research for this video and really going over these papers, especially the meta review, all of the papers will be in the description below. So if you did want to research them yourself, then I definitely encourage that. If you have questions, please leave them below and I will answer them. I do have ADHD, so these videos aren't as fluid and I guess as well structured and organized as I would ideally like them to be, but I do think I get better with every video, I hope. But yeah, if you were confused about something or if there's something you want to know more about, then please don't hesitate to comment. I would love to reply because I really do believe that learning about your menstrual cycle, tracking your menstrual cycle, starting to give your body the energy it needs, especially in the luteal phase, and then just kind of like having a more fluid approach to how you are treating your body and what you're doing and the energy you're expending based on where you're at in your cycle, if you're in your luteal phase and on your period versus in the follicular phase and ovulating, just basically how you're feeling based on the energy you have. I think that is a really realistic place to start for starting to better align with your menstrual cycle and make choices and putting yourself in situations gradually throughout each cycle that are going to better support your menstrual cycle as a way of better supporting your PMDD, as a way of better supporting your ADHD, and also reducing alcohol is something I'm confident in as well. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if there's any videos you'd like me to make. Bye.